religious doctrines have led to some of the most abhorrent and evil events in human history. Many of the doctrines are easily recognizable as dangerous. For example, the Islamic doctrine of stoning apostates does not hide the damage it poses to the world. Christianity is not immune to this either, although I would argue the most dangerous doctrine in Christianity is the one that hides itself as innocent. The doctrine I speak of today is commonly referred to as the Age of Accountability. Before we can begin, we must ask what the theory of the Age of Accountability is. The Age of Accountability states that if a person dies while they are too young to understand God and how to be saved, God will not send them to hell. The reason to believe this is usually stated that it would be unfair for God to send a child to hell, as they simply were not able to grow old enough to be saved. The typical age for this ranged anywhere from 2 to 20 years old. But for this video, we will be strictly talking about those that die before the age of 2. It is easy to see why this theory is appealing. After all, many people have serious moral convictions that tells them innately that a child going to hell is wrong, as they simply did not grow old enough to understand how to be saved. Oftentimes, Christians will stick to dogma when it suits their ideology, saying that homophobia or slavery is justified by the Bible, but abandon this dogma the second it conflicts with their own moral values. The questions must be asked. Where in the Bible does it say that the Age of Accountability exists? Well, unfortunately, nowhere. People may reference Numbers 14:29, as it tells the Israelites that anyone 20 years or younger will not be punished to die in the desert, but all that are older will wander the desert until they die. This verse occurs right after the Israelites have complained to God about wandering in the desert, but God, interestingly enough, forgives those at 20 years or younger. There are other verses such as Deuteronomy 1:39 that state nearly the same thing. Many use these verses to prove God is forgiving to all those that die young, even if they do not believe in Jesus Christ. I hope we can all see very clearly that the concept of how God judges us in the afterlife, and if the Age of Accountability applies then, is not found anywhere in these verses, and anyone that says it is grasping at straws. Now, let us look at verses that completely destroy the argument for Age of Accountability. Romans 3:2-3 says that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. In this verse, all is pretty indicative of children too. But if you require more evidence, Psalm 51:5. I was born a sinner, yes, from the moment my mother conceived me. This verse tells us that every child is born or conceived a sinner from the very beginning. Now, let us look at Romans 6:2-3. That tells us that the wages of sin is death. In other words, all who sin are sentenced to hell. John 3:18 makes it very clear by saying that whoever believes in him, Jesus, is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already, because they have not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. Now, many people will still disagree with me and try to say that any child who dies very young will end up in heaven. This theory completely contradicts John 14:16 and Acts 4:12 that tell us faith in God/Jesus is the only method of salvation, and there is no other. But at this point, people who want to believe in Age of Accountability will interpret Scripture however they choose to justify their beliefs. This leads us to talk about why Age of Accountability is such a dangerous doctrine. The truth is that there are no evil ideas, but the application of these ideas, that is, what the idea leads us to do, can be very evil. Eugenics is not an evil idea in and of itself, but if the belief in a superior race leads us to kill all those that we deem as inferior, it is both an evil and dangerous idea. We can say the same for the Age of Accountability, as it can lead individuals to do actions so morally horrendous, Adolf Hitler himself would be appalled. Let us look at this application in detail. A parent loves their kid and wants what's best for them. Any good Christian parent wants their child to go to heaven, as it is quite literally the best thing for them. To go further, if the child does not go to heaven, that means they will spend eternity in hell, a place of eternal suffering. Hell is the worst possible fate for any human, and the mother should desire deeply that the child avoids this fate. A mother that never tells their child of Christianity is clearly not a very loving mother, as she's not giving the child the best possible chance for salvation. From this, we can say, to be a loving parent, one must do what they can to ensure a child has a place in heaven. Let us examine Luke 13:23-24, which says, Someone asked him, Lord, are only a few people going to be saved? He said to them, Make every effort to enter through the narrow door, because many, I tell you, will try to enter and will not be able to. These verses tell us that very few people will actually be saved, which means that this child, despite the mother's best attempt, will probably not be saved. To go further, if the mother has 5 children, only 1 or 2 of them will most likely spend eternity in heaven. The rest of them will spend eternity in hell. This is extremely sobering. But what is the mother to do? How can the mother have her kids avoid this fate? One would postulate that anything the mother did to force the kids into having salvation would be justified in the long run, even if she loses her own salvation, as she is guaranteed that her 5 children will rest eternally in heaven. Many of you will see where I'm going with this, but for the people that are still behind, I will spell it out for you. If a child dies at the age of 2, they will spend eternity in heaven. But if they reach the age of accountability, say the age of 6, they will have a high probability of spending eternity in hell and a low probability of spending eternity in heaven. So what if the mother intervenes? What if she kills her own children to guarantee a place for them in heaven? This action is beyond disgusting. But if it works, who can disagree with her? Who can tell her she is wrong? In the lens of the doctrine of age of accountability, she has done something truly virtuous by making the difficult decision to kill her children in exchange for their eternity to be in heaven. But in the lens of sanity, she has done something deserving of capital punishment. Infanticide is one of the worst crimes one can commit. Yet she did this in a delusion that her actions would be for the good of her children, as if she is some altruistic person. Most people who believe in age of accountability will grow silent when I bring this application up, or argue a pathetic reason that this is immoral, so no one should do it. This is simply avoiding the problem that the best possible outcome for an individual has occurred because another individual has committed an incredibly heinous act. One has to be delusional to another level to think that the God of the universe will not see this loophole. Many Christians abhor abortion, but I must ask, as every baby is aborted is sent straight to heaven, not having to deal with the pains of the fallen world, why then is it bad? To conclude, age of accountability is strictly opposed by the Scripture. Despite this, many Christians still believe it because it makes them feel better about a young child dying, and they do not have to deal with the apologetical question of how a good and loving God could possibly punish a seemingly innocent child. The truth is that believing in the age of accountability is far more theologically challenging, as it poses the question of should we kill our own children to guarantee a place for them in heaven. Thank you so much for watching. Obviously, this was a pretty controversial subject, and it got really dark at the end, and I'm sorry for that. But in my opinion, whenever we hold ideas and doctrines to heart, we must make sure we test them to see, number 1, if they're true, and number 2, if they're dangerous. And in my opinion, this is a dangerous doctrine. However, if you disagree with me, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Either leave a comment or there is my email in the description, so send me an email. I would love to read it as well. Right now, there's another video on my channel about antinatalism and if having a child is moral or immoral in the eyes of Christianity. It's a pretty interesting video and it's very similar to this one. So if you like this one, go ahead and check that out. I'll be trying to post new videos on a weekly basis, but we'll see if I actually hold to that. Honestly, right now, I'm just testing out YouTube to see if it's good use of my time, see if I enjoy making content, see if anyone enjoys the content I make. So if you want to show me that you do enjoy the content, go ahead and subscribe. But if you don't, there's my email in the description, like I said before. So if you send me some death threats, I'll be sure to get the message.